Alrighty, what's up guys? Mr.Meow here with a brand new game. I wanted to show you guys all about Spellbreak. New game, it's been in alpha for maybe a year. It was just released in the Epic Store last week. I tried it out. I love this game so far. Super fun, so I wanted to try and help everybody get into it. Here we go. Alright, just to get started, this is a battle royale, guys. But there are no guns in this game. This is a magic-based battle royale. Everything is projectile-based, so you use abilities, you use gauntlets for magic. It's very interesting, so here we go. So when you start the game, you see these circles here. You get to choose where you're launching from. So you choose one of the circles. The yellow circles means no one's selected it yet. The red circles mean that someone else has selected that landing area as well. The mana vaults are marked on the map also. Those are loot vaults, essentially. I'll get into that later. I just really want to say I think this is a really interesting battle royale dropping mechanic. It spreads out everybody in a really interesting way. I've kind of always disliked the battle bus taking a straight path because it just creates a predictability of where everyone's going to drop. And if you want to really land hot, you can. You can go where you know guaranteed some other people are going to land, and I find that really interesting. Or, you can try and play it really safe, wait till the last 5 seconds, and then choose to launch from one of the yellow circles. That way you can land more uncontested if you like. I think this game brings a lot of interesting things to the battle royale scene. So when you start the game, you choose a gauntlet, and that essentially will decide what buffs you get. So another interesting thing about this game is as you progress through the game, when you've hit your first couple of circles, when you enter the circle, you gain a buff for your class. Now when you start, you will have a buff. Each class gets a different unique buff to start the game. For example, the stone class gives you 20 more armor just to start the game. Everyone else starts with 100 health, no shields, but armor class actually starts with 20 shields, and that's a pretty interesting thing in my opinion. Each class, like I said, has a different start of the game buff. When you hit the first circle, you will hit your first buff, and you get up to 3 buffs. So the first 3 circles you hit, you will gain buffs, which kind of really make it interesting to kind of customize your class, and we'll kind of get into that later. But it's really interesting to see how the game progresses and how you kind of almost get stronger naturally throughout the game depending on what class you pick. I find it really innovative. Alright, so now let's get into it. The gauntlets, the fighting, the meat. The whole reason you're playing a battle royale, fight other people. So you will choose a gauntlet to start the game. You have fire, ice, stone, lightning, poison, and wind. Now each of them have completely different attacks. You have a light attack and a heavy attack on each of them. So you see here, like stone, you can throw this big boulder as your heavy attack, and then you can also slam on the ground to create that stone avalanche as your light attack. You also have fire here. Fire is very interesting because your heavy attack is a firewall, does a lot of damage, and you have fireballs that you throw as your light attack. Very AoE, control-y, depending on how you use it. Also, you gain immunity to your own firewall after the second circle, which is also really cool. Now next seems to be the very popular ice class. Very popular because it is your sniper class of the game, in a manner of speaking. You create this ice bow that can shoot really far. Headshots deal about 100 damage if you can hit it. And there are some buffs that you can add, but that just depends on how you build it. And the heavy attack is the blizzard. If anybody's caught in it, they're frozen. Very interesting gauntlet. Next we have my personal favorite, which is conduit class. Now here you have conduit class where your light attack is a very fast lightning strikes that you can do with your light attack, and the heavy attack is this really big lightning bolt. You can call it down, and if it hits your opponent or opponents, you can hit multiple people. Next we have poison. The light attack for poison is a spray. It's very shotgun-like. You can get in someone's face and start spraying them. It does a lot of damage. Or you can just start spraying the ground that's around them from pretty far away. It does a lot of damage either way. A lot of DPS over time. As well as the heavy attack being a big poison smoke bomb that really can be disruptive in any fight. Now last but not least, we have wind. Now I would only advise trying to use wind once you've played the game for a little while, because it does have a bit of a skill curve on it. And also, I wouldn't use it as your secondary gauntlet. I would only use it as a main class just to start, because a lot of the uses that you'll find for the gauntlet are only really good if you are wind class. So the light attack for wind spams out little wind balls, or whatever you call them, and they don't really do that much damage, so they're not really that great. You can hit people from far away, but they only hit for like 4 damage a piece. It's not really that great for damaging people. What it's really good for, if you select wind as your class, you can shoot them at the ground and they launch you up in the air, and it just allows a lot of mobility. Now the heavy attack is kind of useful if you have it as your secondary. It's a wind tornado that can trap anybody that's in it or slow them down. It really makes it difficult for them to move. They can still teleport or do their abilities to get out of it, but it's still very, very disruptive. And if you are the wind class, it actually, you can jump on it and it launches you in the air. That's why I just would advise, one, waiting to use this class because it does take a little bit of familiarity with the game, and two, just a lot of the abilities of the gauntlet are only really, I feel like, in my opinion, good for the class itself. I would not recommend using this as your secondary gauntlet unless you really, really absolutely have to. You're stuck looting early game, the only thing you see is a wind gauntlet. So a really important thing in the game is mana. So this bar here, you see it while I'm floating, this is your mana bar. Now you use this for attacking and for jumping. When you hold your jump button, you can float up and it kind of guides you upwards. If you're coming down, you can't really just turn back up on a dime. It'll just kind of slow your fall. You won't just launch straight back up in the air if you're already falling down. But if you jump upwards, it will launch you up until you're out of mana. And your light attacks and heavy attacks both use mana as well. So you'll want to find necklaces to get, more mana in the game. So when it comes to looting, keep in mind the rarities are as they are in every single Battle Royale game you've played. White is common, then you have green, then you have blue, then you have purple, and then your highest is gold. So any item you see, keep those colors in mind. You want to always have gold or purple. Those are always your top tier items. So when you're looting, you're going to find 3 items. They're wearable clothing items that help you in combat. First item being necklace, as I mentioned earlier. So when you add a necklace, it gives you more mana. So you have a white necklace, it gives you a little bit more mana. A gold necklace gives you max mana, and that will help you, glide longer, float longer, do your light attack more, or, just generally helps you in combat the better necklace that you have. So we're going to get into the most important part of looting, and that's finding a belt. You see here, find a belt, it is your armor. White belt is plus 20 armor, green is 40, blue is 60, purple is 80, and gold is 100 armor. So your final clothing item is going to be boots, and boots are just increased mobility. There's no sprint in this game. So keep that in mind. Don't be smashing your sprint button, whatever it is in other games. Every time you upgrade your boots, you become a little bit faster. So next we're going to get into a really, really cool thing in the looting system, and that is mana vaults. So mana vaults are marked on the map, so if you go near them, expect to see people. I would say 9 times out of 10, if you go to a mana vault, there's going to be somebody there contesting you. There are also runes in the game. Runes are essentially just an ability. So you'll have your 2 gauntlets, and then you'll have an ability, which is right here in the middle. It tells you if it's on cooldown or not, and when you're using it, it will be lit up. And these things are found throughout the map. They also have all sorts of rarities. We're going to go through each rune here. That way you guys kind of have an idea of what abilities there are in the game. You will want to use different runes with different gauntlet classes, so I would just experiment and play around with a lot of different things. Try out and see what you like ideally as your loadout. So now I'm going to go over all the runes that are in the game. Now first rune you have dash. Now dash, it literally is very self-explanatory. You just dash forward. It's very short dash, so a lot of people don't use these unless you use them with wind. Wind can really, really utilize them, or poison. Poison really utilizes them as a class. When you use them, they all have different cooldowns. You're using dash. Your cooldown for white dash is 8 seconds, green is 6, blue is 5, purple is 4, and gold is 3. So, yes, you can't go very far, but this rune does have a very short cooldown. Keep that in mind. We also have invis. So invisibility is going to be making its face here as it has in many games. So you're invisible for about 7 seconds, and white invis will have a 9-second cooldown. Green has a 7-second cooldown. Blue with a 6-second cooldown. Purple with a slightly faster cooldown. It's still like 6 seconds, but I feel like it might be like, maybe slightly under 6. And then gold is a 5-second cooldown. Now keep in mind, it is always going to be 7 seconds. You don't get longer invis by getting a higher rarity, it just has a shorter cooldown. Now here's my personal favorite, and that's Featherfall. Now Featherfall launches you up in the air, and then you fall down very slowly, as you can see here. I utilize it just for, high ground in fights, and Featherfall is always the same amount of time, just like invis, but the cooldowns on it are different. So white Featherfall has 13 seconds, whereas green is 10, blue is 9, purple is 8, and gold is 7-second cooldown. So next we have Spring Step. This is another rune that has a very short cooldown, kind of like dash. So I've seen a lot of poison class and wind class utilize Spring Step just because it has a short cooldown, so you can just stay in the air, have a lot of mobility, and it literally just launches you up very slightly. It's not as high as Featherfall, but again, very short cooldown you can utilize if you're, really, really good at maneuvering around. And your cooldowns for Spring Step are white is 7 seconds, green is 6, blue is 5, purple is 4, and gold is a like 3.5, we'll say. Here you have flight. This is probably the best mobility in the game. You literally just like fly forward for like 4 or 5 seconds. It never changes. It's always the same amount of time that you fly, but this literally launches you. You can go across the map. You can be edge a storm and still make it to the zone with this. It lasts a very, very long time, but it does have a very long cooldown. So you see here you fly and you can just go up in the air or, over really far away. It's very hard to chase somebody if they're using flight. So it's a very good escape or reposition, if you're trying to get up high ground, or there's a lot of purposes for flight. And your cooldowns are white at 17 seconds, green at 14 seconds, blue at 11 seconds, purple at 10, and gold at 9. Here is a cool rune, and this is Wolf's Blood. This is kind of reminiscent of Bloodhound's ultimate ability in Apex Legends. And so with this ability, you let out a howl of a wolf, and you are able to highlight enemies that are around you for about, say, 11 seconds. And it also marks invisible players and, just players all over the place, maybe people that are hiding somewhere, maybe in a bush, and very good ability for being aggressive and tracking people down when they're hiding and being invisible or what have you. And the cooldown on this is 11 seconds for white, green is 9 seconds, blue is 8 seconds, purple is 7, while gold is 6 seconds. And again, this is another ability where it does not change. It's always 11 seconds, doesn't matter the rarity, but the cooldowns do change, which is basically how all the runes are. So the last thing I'm going to go over in this game are talents. This is a little complicated part of the game, but it's very easy. I always try to explain it to people as Call of Duty classes, or the class perks. You can kind of pick and choose what you want, and they kind of function exactly the same. You get talent points. You can pick certain ones that have certain talent point values that always add up to 6. You can't go more than 6. Can go less than 6. So if you see here, you start out with 3 basic talents. You have a mind talent, body talent, and spirit talent. Now throughout the game, you'll find these scrolls, and every time you grab one scroll, it upgrades that talent. So when you start out, you have mind scroll with focus mana, which basically gives you first shot buff, because it says when you have more than 80% mana, your first shot does 15% more damage, then 20, then 30 if you have all 3 mind scrolls. And then body scroll, you start out with fervor, which increases your attack speed, so you start out at like 10% as base, and then when you grab your first scroll, it goes to 15, your second scroll goes to like 20, and then your third scroll goes to 30% faster. So again, you always want to try and grab these scrolls. They buff you every scroll that you have. If you have no scrolls, you still get the buff if it's active, but it's only slight. It's the lowest percentage. Your spirit scroll, you start out with Escapist. Escapist says that when you're shot, you run faster for 3 seconds, and that upgrades every time you grab a spirit scroll. So here's your starting 3. They're pretty okay, but you can unlock new ones, and we'll get into that. We'll get into that here. So when you're using a gauntlet as your main class, you level up that gauntlet. And when you level it up enough, you unlock new talents. So when you get each gauntlet to level 3, you unlock a talent, and level 6, you unlock another talent. So each class will give you 2 talents, and I would advise just kind of getting every gauntlet to level 6. That way you can just unlock everything and customize your talents however you want. And when you unlock a talent, you can use it on any class. So just because you unlock a talent for, poison class doesn't mean you have to only use it on poison. You can now start using that on any class you want, which is very interesting, very unique. And again, it kind of reminds me of Call of Duty with the custom class and perks, because these are basically just perks. That's about going to wrap it up here, guys. I hope everybody has as much fun with this game as I've been having, because I've been playing the heck out of it, really enjoying it. And if you like the video, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll be making some videos on gauntlets for some customizations and some builds, so kind of look forward to those in the coming weeks. I'll see everyone later.